at the end of the day, it's all about moderation. And I think all of these things really tie up into balancing your life and just finding what works best for you and live for yourself and not live for somebody else. Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode of the Behind HB podcast. I am your host, Brooke, also known as Honeybrooke, and today is episode 6. I can't believe we are one episode away from being done with season 1 of the podcast. Now, I was saving one of the best things for last, and today we are going to be talking about balancing your life. And I wanted to start this week's podcast episode off with a little quote that I found. It's, "The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities." And I feel like that's the perfect way to start off this podcast because we are going to be talking about 5 easy steps to basically summarize what it means to balance your life. Now, before we get started, if you're new here, hi, you already met me. I want to welcome the people who are listening on various streaming platforms. And if you're watching, you're seeing this live, hi, hello, welcome to the Behind the Scenes channel. This is kind of where I post, obviously, the podcast episodes, sometimes extra bonus vlogs from my main channel, which is at Honeybrooke. And yeah, basically on this podcast, I talk about everything to not make you crazy and to find a little bit of peace in your life. And I think I live a pretty crazy life. Not really like going out and partying, stuff like that, but I feel like I'm always doing something. So talking about these things gives me a time to kind of reflect on my life and also things that I do, things that I hope to do. I try to practice what I preach, so I'm not going to tell you something and then not do it myself. I try and be realistic because I'm a very firm believer that a lot of things are easier said than done. So with this podcast, I'm trying to put that into perspective and not preach a bunch of things that, yeah, it makes sense, but it's like, it's not realistic. So today, I'm going to be talking about something that we struggle with a lot, and that's finding balance in our life. So with that quote that I just read to you, the first topic of the 5 easy steps to balancing your life is deciding what's important, because we fill our schedule with so much stuff, myself included. Literally, I've talked about this 100 times, and I feel like this podcast is a perfect example to where if I have a free moment, like if I finish one project, it's right onto the other, and I literally, like, I can't have downtime. Like, I don't allow myself to have downtime because I'm like, oh, I should be doing something. Like, okay, I went to work today, I did all my homework, like, I went to class, now what's next, right? Like, I have free time at home, so, like, am I gonna write something? Am I going to edit a video? Like, what is the next step, right? And I feel like with all that things, I have all those things I found balance in, and I like staying busy, I like doing all those things, so to me, it doesn't bother me, and I feel like it's because I have found some sort of balance in my life, which I really don't know how I did, but I kind of, in my head, figured out what was most important, what I needed, what I don't necessarily need right now, but I may in the future. And I think one of the best examples, at least in my case for right now, is relationships, like romantic relationships. Like, I think that if you know me, it's common knowledge, I have been single for a very long time, but at the same time, I really don't mind that. Like, a lot of my friends, they're all in relationships, and I'm very happy for them. Me personally, it doesn't bother me that much that I'm not in a relationship and everybody around me is, because I am so devoted to, like, my career and doing, like, things that I love and, like, actually fulfilling my passions. Like, instead of having a person to fulfill me, I feel like writing and video creating and learning things, that fulfills me. And I know things differ between people, and so that could be different for somebody else, and having somebody supportive in your life is what fulfills you, and that is perfectly fine too. And I'm like, in my case, I'm saying that one thing that, like, is the biggest thing to me right now, that I feel like if I was to get into a relationship, it wouldn't be fair to the person, just because I'm so devoted into doing all this stuff. And I feel like an example also that I could give is I'm a full-time student at community college. I have a day job that I do where I'm not quite full-time, but I work like 8-hour days, 8.5-hour days, So, I mean, I'm very blessed to where at my job I have a lot of downtime to where I'm able to work on schoolwork, or if like there's completely nothing to do, I'm able to work on personal projects. So, I'm very blessed to have that. And I really think if I didn't have that downtime during the day at work, like on my lunch, or just when there's absolutely nothing, when all the other stuff is done, I feel like I would not be able to do half the things that I do without having that downtime. So, I feel like a lot of things just kind of are meant to be, and if you can't fit it into your schedule, maybe it's not meant to be right now. And a few months down the line, or maybe in a couple weeks, when you're able to put your full focus into something, then it'll actually like it'll be bigger than you can ever imagine, because you're actually able to like fit it in, and you found that balance to where it's like, okay, maybe I can't do it right now, but a couple weeks from now, yeah, okay, I can do it. And I think that's one of the most important things to also remember, because I do so many different things, and sometimes I forget that it's quality over quantity, sorry. And I forget that sometimes. And everything I do, I try and make it my best work, but definitely that's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, I'm on the internet. I now have this podcast that I do. I run a YouTube channel practically full time. Like, I'm filming almost every single day. If I'm not filming, I'm editing, and if I'm not doing either of those things, I'm writing. So I definitely feel like I'm a full-time content creator, but mostly it's just for fun at the same time, because it's not like my full career, which if it was, that would be amazing too, but right now it's not in the cards. So our next point is going to be something that maybe some people might struggle coming to terms with. I know I struggle with this all the time, and that's cutting ties with things that don't serve you anymore. And I know that's very hard, because we like to hold on to things, and because like for me, in my case, like I always hold on to things for so long, and I kind of just let the ties be cut naturally when I'm like over it. But like cutting off a friendship just drastically, I physically can't do that, and I kind of let it happen naturally, if that makes sense. But I know that's one of the things easier said than done, and I know that cutting ties with things can take time, and people say, oh, you just need to cut this person off, or you need to cut this thing off because it's toxic to you. Sometimes those are lessons that need to be learned, and things don't always happen right when you want to. I'm sure everybody knows that and has experienced that in their own ways, but I'm preaching this as one of the things, because if you are constantly trying to balance something that isn't serving you or isn't benefiting you at all, then I feel like the best thing to do is try and get yourself out of that situation, or try and cut things off with whatever that thing may be. And who knows, maybe you're at a job that you absolutely hate, and you have another job lined up that doesn't seem so doable at the time because of this job, and so you can't work both of them or whatever. But I promise you, taking that leap of faith and cutting the toxicity off, even if it's scary, because I know it is, I know it's scary, then it might turn into something bigger than you've ever imagined. Also, since we are about halfway through, we are about to go on to the third step in this whole balancing your life talk. I say this in every podcast, but I think taking notes is a really fun thing. If you're listening in the car or while you're doing something else, don't worry about it. You can always rewatch later. But if you're just listening, or if you're watching right now, I feel like jotting down a little bit of notes. That's why I like listing things, because me personally, I love lists. I live by lists. And then it's just something you could look back on. And that's what I tried to narrow it down to, like 5 easy points that everybody can remember, and hopefully just try and like take it into their own interpretation. But just wanted to add that in there. Anyways, moving on to point number 3. Alright, point number 3 kind of goes along with point number 1, and that is time management. So I feel like time management is one of the key things to having balance in your life, because you don't want something to overwork you, or you don't want to put too much energy into something that ends up wasting your time that you cannot get back. Because we all know the feeling that when you waste time, it's something you can't get back, and it's literally the worst feeling, because you're like, why did I even do that? Why did I spend 2 hours trying to fix this thing when I could literally just pay somebody to do it, or it just didn't work out how I expected? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, just throwing out an example, if you really like working out, if you're really into going to the gym, but let's say you have a family, or you work full time, you go to school full time, and it just isn't practical to go to the gym in the middle of the day, all I want to say is something is better than nothing. And if you do a quick 10-minute high quality workout, or if you do a 20-minute workout of whatever you want, like a little bit of everything, something is better than nothing. At least you can say you did it, and then you'll feel good about yourself that you were able to like fit it into your busy schedule. But also I wanted to add, like, kind of the main thing people think about when you say time management is fitting everything in and deciding like what's most important, how much time should I spend on this. And I feel like when planning out your day, or like if you have a routine, that is probably really helpful. Deciding how much time you want to spend on certain things really could help. Like if you were like, okay, I want to clean my room today, or I want to clean this portion of my house, I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. And if you're my mom listening to this, I'm taking this from you because it actually is pretty helpful. And this is her little tip, where if you set a timer for 15 minutes and you're like, okay, I'm going to get this portion of the room done, or I'm going to clean this in this amount of time. And then when the timer goes off, I'm either so into this to where I don't want to stop, or it's like, okay, I did it, and something is better than nothing, and we can move on to this a different day, and now I need to go do this. So I feel like both options really could go into time management. But for number 3, I'm gonna put in time management is one of the keys to balancing your life, if I'm being honest. And building off of time management, I feel like you're thinking, okay, Brooke, like, yes, I know in theory that all sounds great, and in a perfect world, yeah, I would set a timer on my phone and then I would go clean my room. But in reality, I can't seem to find the motivation. And I totally get what you're saying, because I struggle with that big time. I feel like I overwork myself a lot to where, okay, when it comes to cleaning and stuff, I'm not always on top of that. And that is okay, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have motivation at that time, it'll come back again. And I feel like if it's not hurting anybody, then it's okay. It'll get done eventually. And if you don't have motivation now, it'll come back. I'm just telling you, it's okay. I know when people are saying, oh, you got to do this, this, and this, and you're like, I physically just can't do it because I'm mentally drained, or I'm just so exhausted. Finding motivation is definitely easier said than done. And so if that's what you're thinking at this point, I totally get where you're coming from. And that's the whole thing about balance. Like, yeah, some days you're going to have rest days and you can't always be going, or some days you're going to be really productive. So I feel like it's, at the end of the day, it's all going to get done. Just the timeline, that's all up to you. Time management. Going back, see, it all connects. And for our 5th and final step, I'm going to touch on something that we've talked about before, and that is investing time in yourself. Because in reality, when you have such a busy life and when you're trying to balance it all, it's important to take time for yourself and do things that you enjoy, because in the midst of all of this, you are going to lose yourself. And if you take those moments, just like if you're really into meditating, just like 10 minutes a day, either when you wake up or when you're going to bed, trust me, it helps. And I know we've talked about meditating before, like activating your inner goddess and all that kind of stuff. But whatever it is you're into, if you're into yoga or just like if you're into reading, take time for yourself, because trust me, it really helps when your life is getting pretty chaotic. And at the end of the day, it's all about moderation. And I think all of these things really tie up into balancing your life and just finding what works best for you, and live for yourself and not live for somebody. So that is going to bring us to the end of episode 6. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. I just wanted to add, I'm also not qualified at all to be giving advice. So if this sounds like complete you know what to you, I'm sorry, don't listen to me. But if this helped you at all, or if this opened your eyes to something new, I appreciate you being here, and I would appreciate it even more if you gave it a like, or if you subscribed. That would be even cool too. But yeah, I hope to see you guys next week. Make sure you guys check out all the links in the description if you're watching on the behind the scenes channel, and if you're listening, thank you again. If you want to see what I look like, or want to have more of a face-to-face contact, come over to the YouTube channel. And then there's also my main channel too, and all my other social medias if you want to check that out. But anyways, thank you guys so much again, and I will see you next Friday for our final episode of season 1. Alright, bye guys, and remember, balance is key.